Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, July 17th. Today we will continue to have some thunderstorms to deal with over parts of eastern Utah and also along the Sierra Front again, mainly in the higher terrain. And then also we could see a strip of isolated lightning from northeast Nevada over far northwest Utah into southeast Idaho. There's some moisture in place this morning and a front that will be brushing the northern areas. So we could see some isolated thunderstorms in these areas that are very dry and could cause certainly new fire starts. Further north, closer to the front, we will see some breezy winds across central and eastern Idaho with gusts between 30 and 40 miles per hour and low relative humidity. As we move through the day on Saturday, winds will decrease, but still breezy over parts of central and eastern Idaho, but possibly not as strong as what we'll see today. Otherwise, we should start losing some thunderstorm activity both Saturday and Sunday across the Great Basin, with only possibly a few isolated storms, maybe along the fringes of eastern Utah or the Arizona Strip, and possibly along the Sierra Front, but for the most part, much less lightning over the weekend than what we've seen recently. Over the last 24 hours, we saw thunderstorms over parts of eastern and southern Utah up into parts of central Utah, and also thunderstorms out near a stationary boundary over parts of eastern and central Nevada, and then back up the Sierra Front. These thunderstorms were generally on the drier side. We did have some bigger cells over parts of the higher Sierra that did produce some heavier rainfall in localized areas. We saw light initial attack across the Great Basin yesterday with smaller fires reported across many areas. Over the last 14 days, we've seen very dry conditions over much of southern Idaho into the western two-thirds of the Great Basin, with only some spotty precipitation across parts of Utah tied to the thunderstorm activity. However, our fuel situation is still critical over the southern two-thirds of the Great Basin, with ERCs generally in the 80th to 90th percentile, in many areas still pushing the 97th percentile over parts of Utah. How these ERCs relate to normal: over parts of the Sierra Front, ERCs have spiked to well above normal and are now approaching records for the time of year. Over parts of Utah, the ERCs have come down but are still at records over most of the state due to how dry it's been. Looking at our 10-hour fuel moisture, you can see again very dry conditions over much of western Utah across Nevada, and even punching north up into Idaho. The satellite image from this morning shows a cold front moving across the northern part of Idaho into the northern Rockies. Again, it's out ahead of this front where we could see some thunderstorm activity and also gusty winds for Idaho. Moisture still in place over the eastern half of Utah for isolated thunderstorms, and then we are expecting some isolated thunderstorms again along the Sierra Front. So for later this afternoon, we do have high risk for some of these thunderstorms along the Sierra Front in areas that don't receive any rainfall. And also we have some high risk for the winds out ahead of the front across Idaho today. But again, still watching that lightning activity or that lightning potential over southeast Idaho into far northwest Utah and northeast Nevada, as again, even isolated thunderstorms could cause some impacts. Looking at the relative humidity for later today, relative humidity increases just a little bit over eastern Utah with that moisture in place and the thunderstorms, and dry elsewhere. And again, you can see the image on the right showing that those thunderstorms possible over southeast Idaho into northwest Utah and northeast Nevada, and then again along the Sierra Front, and then still activity over eastern Utah. Coverage-wise, we'll probably see similar coverage to what we saw yesterday. Moving into Saturday, that front moves well to the east in the north, so winds will relax a little bit but still remain breezy over parts of Idaho, and generally seeing drier conditions across the basin with no high risk. Relative humidity will generally be in the single digits to low teens region-wide, and then again, the wind picture on the right shows those breezy winds in the north, but again, not quite as strong as what we'll see today, with generally lighter winds elsewhere across the basin. As we move into Sunday, very similar conditions, generally drier weather region-wide with no high risk. We will again see relative humidity in the single digits to low teens, and again, still breezy across parts of southern Idaho, gusts generally in the mid-20s. Otherwise, lighter winds, and if we do see any isolated thunderstorm activity, it would be on the fringes of the Great Basin, and again, very isolated. Forecast amounts of precipitation, very little across the Great Basin, as any thunderstorms that will be isolated will produce generally light rainfall, if any. There could be, again, some higher amounts in some of these localized higher terrain areas that see some brief heavier precip. As we go into early next week, we will see moisture start to return to the Great Basin. On Monday, we may see a little bit more lightning coverage over parts of central and eastern areas of the basin. Right now, we are not high-risking any areas. Models have been very uncertain with the location of some of this moisture and how quickly it will push back north, but we are going to see a resurge of the moisture going into the early to mid portion of next week. Obviously, conditions very dry across the basin, so we'll be watching this return of lightning very closely. On Tuesday, possibly a little bit more moisture in the southern and eastern areas of the Great Basin. We still have this area of low pressure off the coast. And then on Wednesday, again, moisture generally over the eastern half of the area. We will be watching this western side, especially across Nevada and up into southern Idaho as we get towards Tuesday and Wednesday, as if this moisture does get pulled up with this low off the coast, it could be pretty fast moving and on the drier side. So we will be watching again, mainly Nevada and Idaho, for that return of moisture in areas that have not seen much lightning to see potential for high risk. As we move into Thursday, very similar pattern, possibly deeper moisture moving up into Utah finally associated with the monsoon. It's a little obviously quite a bit late, but it looks like we are seeing some potential for some wetter types of storms over the eastern part of the basin going into next week. Looking at the 7-day total precip, which just takes us through Friday morning, you can see at least a little bit more on the map across parts of Utah and far southern areas, so we will see that return of moisture. But again, further north and west is where we're looking at that drier activity. The 8 to 14 day outlook shows generally warm conditions and below normal precipitation for parts of the basin, but you can see over parts of Arizona into far southern Utah, kind of that return to normal signature. So again, that is a little bit more indicative that the monsoon will be starting and pushing up north into the basin. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.